Well, I'm Mya Sears, and I'm a scientist in the Earth Observing Laboratory at NCAR. I work with a lot of the data side of the observational products, so we have a lot of instruments out in the field that go during field campaigns, but also run kind of in the meantime for testing reasons, and I deal with a lot of the data that comes from them. I work with a lot of different kinds of data from maybe profilers, radars, LiDARs, as well as surface stations, radiosondes, and dropsondes. So a whole bunch of different kinds of data types and a lot of different kinds of data formats that come in. So I've moved two data sets to GDEX. One is the data set from the 449 megahertz profiler, and that's with EOL's ISS system. And also I use data on GDEX from ERA 5. I've created my own specific XAR store as a subset of GDEX's larger ERA 5 dataset. Before I started using GDEX, I pulled ERA 5 data from Copernicus's climate data store. It was a relatively easy process using their API request, but it was taking a really, really long time because the data is subset by time step. And I wanted a lot of time steps during the course of a 3-month field campaign, but instead of wanting the entirety of the ERA 5 output, I just wanted one lat-lon profile. So I was having to make pretty big data requests for every single time step, and that was taking a long time on the scale of a couple hours. So I was spending a couple days just getting that data set. After I put that on GDEX, it was really, really easy to subset. It took me, I don't know, maybe a couple hours to write and troubleshoot that code, but now running that code, it takes seconds on the scale of less than a minute. And so that's a lot faster, and I have really loved using GDEX for ERA 5 specifically. Here is an example notebook that I created with Harsha from Sizzle on the M2 HATS data comparison with ERA 5. I'd already done all of the putting data into the XAR store kind of on the back end, so this notebook starts where the data is already in GDEX. But you can see the workflow that I go through now that my data is there. And so just making the classic Python package imports, defining a research question, and you can see here that I want to subset ERA 5 and 449 on the same height and time level and perform a direct comparison. Step 2 is locating the data set and loading the data in. And you can see here, these are just 2 lines of code. And it's just finding the XAR store on the GDEX for each ERA 5 and the 449 profiler. And really all you have to do is this. Before in my workflow, I was downloading these files and I was reading them in programmatically. And the data wasn't gridded, and so I couldn't use the OpenMF data set that I would usually use. So just an example for how easy this workflow is right now. Aligning the data sets, since I did a lot of the data pre-processing before I put it in the XAR store on GDEX, was pretty simple. I just had to align them to the same time grid, and that is pretty easily handled using the interp function. And then we compare the data sets. We've already read in the data is on GDEX, it was lazily loaded, and so now this is just the loading step. And since it's already very well formatted, you can see that it's just a couple lines of code plus a little bit of embellishment to make some more interesting information on the plots. And you have your data right there. We've already performed the comparison. And I can tell you that before my data was in GDEX, this workflow was really long. It involved a lot of notebooks and Python scripts that you don't see here just because the data is already ready for use. And so here I go, just analyzing these plots. It goes right to the science, which is really nice. Not many hours spent in the pre-processing besides what I did one time to get it into GDEX. And then just another plot making another different type of comparison, subsetting by day, by hour of day, and by height. For someone watching who might not have used GDEX before, I will say that anytime your data takes a different format or is located in a different place, that is pretty scary, and I get it. There was a lot of lift for me to get my data here, and Sizzle was actually really helpful in working with me every step of the way. So I never felt like I was floundering. I never felt like I had to do this whole process myself or know exactly what a XAR store was doing under the hood. There were a lot of really, really helpful people who worked with me to get their data into GDEX.